Monkey.
Now, after AJ's loss to Alexander Usyk, this is his second loss in a row. There have been a lot of people very critical of AJ, saying that he should retire. I find this extremely bizarre, and I'm going to let you guys know why I think that. So firstly, if you compare Anthony Joshua to Deontay Wilder, I'm someone who said that Deontay Wilder should definitely continue. That he has a lot of heart in him, and that he showed good punch resistance between the second and third fight, and I don't think he's super shot to bits, even after getting knocked out in the third fight. And I do think that he'll show a relatively good chin, and it's probably a lot based on his heart rather than his chin or his defense or anything, because Deontay Wilder has a lot of heart. Joshua didn't suffer any devastating knockdowns against Alexander Usyk. He didn't get dropped. He did get buzzed, but even in this fight, in my opinion, he showed a much better chin in this fight than he did in the first fight. In the first fight, Joshua looked like I guess you could say, rabbit in the headlights. I was watching a Hatman Strikes Back video, and he said it perfectly. Joshua kind of looked like a victim in the first fight, like he didn't know what was going on. In this fight, he had a lot more determination. You know, he was looking to pressure down Usyk, walk him down and hit him to the body and try come up top. But obviously Usyk made it very, very difficult for Anthony Joshua to consistently get anything off. So that's my first reason. I feel like his punch resistance is still very, very good. It's still intact. And although people think that, AJ's chinny, he's not completely done in terms of his punch resistance. If you compare him to Dillian Whyte, I believe that Dillian Whyte's punch resistance is gone. That he is not able to take, decent shots on the chin very well. That if he gets clipped, with an even decent shot, his legs will go. But that's not the case with Anthony Joshua. He didn't suffer, devastating beatings in the second fight or even in the first fight against Usyk. Another reason I think AJ shouldn't retire is because there's still so many good matchups to put him in there. Some people will say, oh, he should rematch Dillian Whyte, AJ Dillian Whyte too, it will do good numbers in England. I'm sure people are very interested in that fight in England. Maybe they're not as interested in that fight as they are in a Deontay Wilder fight. That's another exceptional fight for Anthony Joshua. Maybe a lot of people want to see AJ versus Ruiz 3 with a more focused Ruiz, with a more determined Andy Ruiz, who is lighter, who is trimmer, who is much better at his feet, and who can bend at the waist. Because Andy Ruiz in the second fight, he was just way too heavy. He was slow, and he couldn't bend down at the waist because he had too much body fat around his torso. We still could see AJ versus Fury. That's also another fight that we need to see. We need to see everyone fight each other. AJ might not go down as the best fighter of his era, but he'll go down as a great competitor. In order to have someone who stands, you know, up and above the rest, you need competitors, you need side characters. Ali was great because he had the likes of Foreman, Frazier, Liston, and, he beat them, and there were also a lot of guys like Ernie Shavers, Ken Norton, and so forth. That era was filled with a lot of fantastic fighters. It's just that Muhammad Ali stood head and shoulders above the rest. He was the main guy, he was the outstanding guy, but he was in a division where there were a lot of good supporting cast around him that made him great, that pushed him to be great. And that should be the same in this era. Whether it's Usyk or Fury or whoever reigns supreme, they should have a good supporting cast. They should be in there with other top guys who elevate them, who make people think, you know what, this guy is so, so great. He beat such a great fighter. We shouldn't be saying, oh, AJ's lost and therefore he should retire. What if AJ goes in there and puts up an amazing fight against, let's say, a Deontay Wilder? And then people will look at that AJ Deontay Wilder fight and they'll give Tyson Fury more credit because they'll say, well, look what Wilder and Joshua were able to achieve, were able to pull off in their fight, and Fury was able to knock out Wilder twice. So that's going to elevate Tyson Fury's status, isn't it? So yeah, in order to have someone who stands above the rest, you need to have a great supporting cast. And I feel like AJ, if he doesn't end up as the top guy, he can end up as one of the top guys in an amazing era. There's still a lot of financial mileage left in Anthony Joshua. You know, Anthony Joshua can go fight a good level opponent and it will sell. You know, wouldn't you guys want to see an Anthony Joshua versus a Joe Joyce, or an Anthony Joshua versus a Daniel Dubois? Maybe after a few fights, a Jared Anderson, maybe. Would you not want to see Anthony Joshua up against Jarrell Miller, potentially? So you've got to understand that there's so many more exciting fights that AJ can be involved in. You know, it's unfortunate that he couldn't beat Usyk, but it is what it is. It's okay. Usyk had his number, and there's other great fights AJ can be involved in, and AJ could win those fights. So there's no reason to discourage him or count him out. Rather, we should want to see him fight other top guys in the division. Anthony Joshua needs learning fights. AJ didn't have the time to really develop. He was thrown, I mentioned this in my last video, he was thrown straight into the deep end, Anthony Joshua. He should probably be put against middle tier opposition, not the top guys. Maybe I want to put him in there with Wilder as his next fight, or Fury, or someone like that, but I'd probably put him against someone like Zhang, you know, who fought Hrgovic. You could put him in there against Filip Hrgovic. You could put him there against Daniel Dubois, or Joy Joyce, sorry. I always bottle his name. Apologies. Joe Joyce, you could put him in there against. Put AJ in there with someone he can develop his ring IQ. Because is Anthony Joshua really the finished article? I think he should be put in the ring against someone who isn't necessarily a devastating puncher, but someone who does have decent skills. Someone who, you know, will get AJ thinking, but ultimately someone who AJ should stop. Someone who isn't as tricky or on the level as Alexander Usyk, so AJ can get more ring smart. You know, if Tyson Fury was in there against Usyk, he would have used his body weight. Tyson Fury does subtle things extremely well. Fury knows when to clinch, when to lean on you, and do those very subtle things that break down his opponent. Because he's got experience. You know, he's survived knockdowns and been through tough fights like against Steve Cunningham. You know, AJ hasn't been through those fights where he should win, he goes through some adversity, but then ultimately ends up being the winner. No. If Joshua, you know, faces adversity, he normally gets KO'd, or he's only been KO'd once. He normally loses. Against Usyk, he faced a little bit of adversity because Usyk was very technically good in the first fight. He ended up losing on points. Against Ruiz, he got hit with a very good hook by Ruiz, and then Ruiz was able to get him out of there. So AJ just needs to be in there with someone who isn't too dangerous, but someone who is kind of a middle tier opposition. And hopefully then and there, AJ can develop his ring IQ. So those were my quick thoughts on Anthony Joshua and whether he should retire or not. I think it's very, very strange that people are calling for Anthony Joshua to retire. I know he lost. I'm aware of that. But it's all right to take losses. Boxing fans often complain about fighters not taking the most competitive in the big fights and not making it happen. But when a fighter loses, they chastise him and say, you know what, you know, you should retire. Based off what? Based off losing to Alexander Usyk? Do you really believe that there are not other top guys Anthony Joshua could beat or make competitive fights with? Of course there is. People are making it seem like losing to Usyk is the end of the world. When you fight other top guys, you're going to lose. It is what it is. So those were my quick thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, peace.